Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. This video idea comes from a comment by Silverback HC, and they said, "Hello Joey, a good topic would probably be what you think of the future of handheld gaming, because I don't expect to be tempted by anything after the Retroid 4 unless they make something that can emulate PS3 or Xbox 360. And you know what? I thought this would be a good discussion style topic to just talk about and make a video about. So I have my water here, I have my notes here. Let's just jump right in. Before we talk about the future of retro handhelds and gaming, I think it's important to talk about where we are currently and as of 2024. And we're still seeing RK3566 processor handhelds in 2024. This all started with the Anbernic RG503 that was back in May of 2022. So we're almost at 2 years now of using the exact same processor, and it's getting a little tiring, I think, for most of us. Now, normally it wouldn't be an issue, but the problem that I have with the RK3566 is that it doesn't properly play Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, or PSP, and obviously everything over that. So you're on the cusp of being able to play those games properly, and you still can't. And we've had 2 years of that now. But it doesn't seem to be stopping, because Powkiddy just released the RGB 10 Max 3, and all we're kind of getting nowadays is just different form factors, different versions of that chip in every which way that you can think of. Here's one that's great for GBA. Here's one that's great for Super Nintendo and all the 4:3 aspect ratio consoles. Here's one that's great for this. And suddenly you're just bombarded with all these 3566 devices. And the only difference is the form factor, the buttons, and all of that. And it gets to be a little bit annoying because at some point you want some actual innovation. It's just, this is the 10th now device that you're just going to run the same games on at the same price point, and it's still being praised as the best handheld of the year and all of that stuff. And I don't think that's great. But the funny part is the RG503, which was the first 3566 handheld, released at $150 back 2 years ago. The newest RGB 10 Max 3 is releasing at $90. So we've come down in price a little bit. But there's a big difference nowadays. For $90, you could get the Retroid Pocket 2S, and that actually does Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast, and if you don't mind the screen, you could do PSP. But the point being, once you add that processing power now in the under $100 category, why are we still releasing 3566 devices? And the answer seems to be people buying them. But I think most people should be looking ahead now at T610s, T618s. And it's kind of weird that we haven't seen a lot of those. We've had a handful, but not as much as we've seen in the 3566 devices. But I have to thank God that Retroid exists, because if I had to continually just review 3566 devices, I would lose my mind. And I'm already losing my mind. I don't think I'm going to review the RGB 10 Max 3, mostly because I don't see the point. It's just, I could just rehash a different review I've done already and be like, hey, it's this, but the form factor is different. It's a little bit more comfortable, maybe, whatever. So thank you, Retroid, for actually innovating in this space using different chips. And this goes for AYN as well, and we'll talk about AYN, but Powkiddy, Anbernic, and whoever else, just, can we move on from the 3566s? Just keep selling your old stock of other ones, and let's actually start innovating in other ways, because that would be great. So the current state of retro handhelds is stagnation. That's the best way that I could put it. You have Powkiddy and Anbernic kind of just releasing the same devices over and over in different form factors and different styles, and then occasionally they'll release something that's completely different. It might hit sometimes, like the RGB 30 hit for a lot of people. It might not hit, like the RG Arc, which, again, same kind of idea. It's a different form factor. It's, here's a Sega Genesis, but we're using the same power. And they couldn't even get that right because we wanted to play Saturn on it. So all in all, it's just kind of stagnation right now in retro handhelds. But that's also not true either, because there is a lot of innovation going on, just at higher price points. And let's talk about that. There are companies that are trying to push the envelope, and obviously we can talk about the high end of Windows and Linux handhelds, but I mean AYN with the Odin 2. You kind of just have to step back and look at retro handhelds as a whole. The Odin 2 at $299 using a current Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip that was used in Samsung phones is a break the market type of release. It's a big release, and you can't understate how big that is. $299, while expensive for a lot of people, is not that much more than what a lot of these handhelds are going for. If you go and look at the Ambernic RG556, it's about $190. Add $100 and you have an Odin 2. Same thing with the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. Add $100, you have an Odin 2. You have a device that kind of just broke the market in a way that adjusts the prices of everything under it and also makes it so that any release after it at even a more expensive price point is kind of not making sense anymore. And every Odin 2 owner should be happy right now, and for a lot of different reasons. For $299 US, or if you were lucky enough to get into the early bird for $240 US, you have a device that is most likely not going to have any competition for the next 2 years in that price point. And here's a quick example. Retroid just released a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. It's a Dimensity 1100 chip. It's still not anywhere near the performance of the Odin 2. Now, do you think that the Retroid Pocket 5 is going to be anywhere near the Odin 2 in performance? My answer, no. It'll probably be a little bit under. It probably won't get to what the Odin 2 can do. And now we've come to that point where you've waited 2 years for releases from another company that's the closest to AYN that can do this sort of thing, and they still aren't there. So you can start to see why the Odin 2 is just so revered and such a just different market-breaking release. It kind of just makes it a future-proof device in an industry that is never future-proof. You can't say that tech is future-proof. But let me explain why I think that this might be the closest that we've ever come to in retro handhelds for that. The Odin 2 is more powerful than what current emulation on Android provides. We don't have a Wii U emulator. There's no Xbox emulator, Xbox 360, PS3. We are basically stuck at the high end of GameCube, Wii, and Switch. So if you release another device that's more powerful than the Odin 2, what are you getting exactly? There's a lot of games that are just broken on PlayStation 2 or GameCube. No matter what you do, you could try and brute force as much as you want on Android, it's still going to be broken. So we're not going to get there for those. For Switch, you might see some improvements. You might be able to do a 2x at some point. You might be able to do docked for a lot of games. But the actual significant benefits just aren't there. You could release, and Ioneo is releasing the Pocket S, and it's supposed to have the newer chip, Snapdragon Gen 3X, I believe. But pricing wise, we're going to see that it's about $450 to $500 US if we go by what their pre-order deposit is. And I think it's $225 US if you convert it. And that's usually about 40 to 50% of what the final price is, meaning that it's now going to be a lot more expensive than the Odin 2 is. But what do you get for that extra power? And the answer is really not a lot. You have to actually wait for emulator progress to catch up for anything more powerful than the Odin to make sense. And that's where we look at the whole industry as a whole and say, we're kind of stuck at the moment. We're going to be in stagnation even at the high end because we're going to get tricked into buying more powerful handhelds. This isn't going to be the first time it's going to happen. Ioneo is going to come out with more that are going to be more powerful. Odin or AYN might do it too. Somebody else might do it. But you're not going to get a lot for doing that change. So it becomes a scenario where the Odin 2 ends up being your best purchase for Android for the next 2 years at least, unless you can envision an Xbox or Wii U or PS3 emulator somehow being developed, released, and stable in the next 2 years. I don't see it. The closest thing that we're probably going to get is a Windows emulator that you could put actual Windows emulation on and then use that on the Odin. Or if we can get Linux on it, which I think they're close to. But point is, on the Android side of things, we're kind of stuck. Plus, you're probably going to be alpha testing any emulators they release while RK3566 devices are coming out every month. And you're just like, oh, here's Pal Kitty with another one, and this one has 5 screens. Oh, yay. Right? And so therein lies the issue. You have the AYN Odin 2 at $299. That kind of just breaks the market in a way of you buy it and you basically have a good 2 years where you could say, and I'm going to say probably more than 2 years, but let's say 2 years, where you could just ignore every other handheld release unless it's doing completely something different and wacky. And that $100 difference between the 556 and the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro and the Odin 2 starts to look really small when you add up all of the different benefits that the Odin 2 provides, plus the future-proofing and all of that. And it just becomes a scenario where, okay, I'll give you the $100 right now if I can get 2 years out of this. Otherwise, what else are you going to do? You're going to buy the 4 Pro and then you're going to buy the 5 Pro and then you're still not anywhere near the Odin 2 and you're going to buy the 556, then you're going to buy the 566 or whatever they release and you're still not anywhere near the Odin 2. That's the kind of way that I think most people should look at this when they're looking at the best value for their money. And I think that makes sense. Because yeah, as much as the just buy a Steam Deck bro, just buy an Odin 2 bro meme has been used to death right now, and I'm even doing it in this video, and I promise this is not an ad or shilling for AYN at all. It just happens to be that that one product is kind of the whole topic of today. But just imagine it. The Retroid Pocket 3 Plus came out a year ago. The Retroid Pocket 4 and 4 Pro just came out. In another year, it'll be the Retroid Pocket 5 and 5 Pro. And if you can answer the question that you think the Retroid Pocket 5 and 5 Pro are going to use a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 or better, then you might be able to just wait and buy that. But if it doesn't, and you think that it won't, which is my personal opinion, then why wouldn't you buy the best handheld that you could buy right now for a little bit more money? Obviously ignoring that the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is a little bit smaller and all of that. But the point is, if you're looking for the best, most powerful, and you want the best bang for your buck, which I keep getting comments about, man, the R36S is only $35 and look at what it can do. And oh my God, that's amazing. So a lot of you are looking for the best bang for your buck. You're looking for the best way to use your money. But best doesn't always mean cheapest. And in this case, I think for a lot of people that are looking at the 4 Pro or looking at the 556, aim a little higher and just future-proof it. Spend a bit more and save in the long end because you'll thank yourself later for it. This is coming off as an ad for the Odin 2 again, and I really don't want it to come off as that. So I can't do this video any other way than just continually talk about it. So I'm not going to say it anymore. Again, not an ad for the Odin 2. It's just, this is the market. This is what we have to deal with, and this is how I can talk about it. So that's a look at our top end of the Android gaming space, and I guess Linux kind of too. We could talk about Windows and Linux as well. And they're obviously a lot more expensive than the Odin 2. They can still play retro games, so they're still retro handhelds in some way. A discussion around x86 devices would probably be a whole video on its own. There's a lot that you can talk about in this space, and the market is starting to shake up quite a bit right now, and you can look no further than Ioneo for an example of that. Ioneo is absolutely aware that they're on borrowed time, and we could have this argument till the cows come home, but you have to look at the market. We have Asus that's now in for Windows handhelds. We have Lenovo. We have MSI. We know Xbox had it on their timeline, and it's probably going to be making something. We have companies coming out of everywhere that are starting to make Windows handhelds or x86 handhelds, and obviously the Steam Deck. The market is going to be flooded. In 2 years, you'll be able to walk into Best Buy and pick whatever you wanted from a shelf, from 10 different handhelds. Where does Ioneo, and I'm not going to just pick on Ioneo, but where does Ioneo and GPD and 1X Player and all of those companies come in a market that looks like that? Why would I, or you, go ahead and buy an Ioneo device and worry about support, worry about warranty, pay more, and all of the things that come with buying from an overseas company over just walking into Best Buy and knowing I could return it in 14, 30 days? So what did INEO do? And they're smart because they're the first ones that have done this out of all of the companies that are overseas. They started releasing wacky and different designs. And I don't mean wacky in a weird way, but we have a vertical coming. We have a flip coming with 2 screens. We have a flip coming with a keyboard. We have a clamshell flip. We have a PC, a mini PC. They're throwing so many darts at the board that you can't even see the board anymore. And again, I don't mean to single out just INEO. GPD is going to have this issue. 1X Player, Aoki Zoe, all of these kind of companies are going to be in the same boat. The only difference is INEO has kind of been smart in this way. They just got a head start on trying to diversify ahead of time because they know exactly what's coming. These other companies are still doing the exact same thing and not realizing that, hey, there's a storm coming and we're going to be in trouble at some point. And so it's a roundabout way of saying that for the x86 devices, that market is going to look very different in the next few years. And I said that I wouldn't talk about this in this video because it could be a whole other video, but that's my take on it so far and what's happening. Now, if we look at the $200 to $300 US and below market, so where all of your Powkitties, Miyus, Ambernicks, and all of that usually live, I don't think we're going to see a lot of difference in those price ranges in the sub 100 and sub 150 and all of that. We're still going to get RK3566s or H700s and all of these kind of underpowered chips that still can't do Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast properly. And they're just going to be in different designs. We know that Ambernick has a flip coming. We know Miyu has a flip coming. And we're just going to eat that up. And I'm part of the problem. I'm going to eat it up too. Of course, I want to flip. But I don't see much difference happening in there. And I thought we would see more T618s and T610 devices. What's in the Retro Pocket 2S and what's in the RG405M. And that would start pulling its way down. But it's been 2.5 years, I think. October 2021. I'm looking at it now. Powkitty X18S came out with the T618. We are now 2 years and a little bit past that. So the same kind of time frame of the RK3566. And we're still not seeing a lot of the T618s and we're still not seeing them drop in price. It's a bit weird because we know they can. Retroid did it with the 2S and they even added Hall sticks and front firing speakers and everything in that 2S. The 2S is just awesome. But maybe that's still coming. Honestly, if I see another 16:9 device with a 3566 chip or something that isn't a T610 or better, I'm probably just going to scream and lose my mind because I'm getting so tired of it happening. They're using the wrong chips for these devices that they're releasing. We're seeing it with the RG Arc. We're seeing it with the Trim UI Smart Pro. We're seeing it with the X55. We're seeing it with every single almost release that comes out, even the RGB 10 Max 3. Why are we still seeing 3566s? Because we're all buying it. The videos come out and everybody's praising it as the next biggest thing. And this is awesome. And this is the best budget handheld now and all of that. And so we all buy them and we continue our own demise in causing this crappy industry trend of 3566. And throughout all of that, the one area that should be improved and has not improved at all is software. We are getting releases continually and we're going backwards, not forwards. Because if you look at the RG Arc, then you go and look at the 3566H and Plus, the actual software just went backwards. The 35XX releases have awful software, and you can't change my mind on this. Go ahead and try and update the firmware, and go ahead and look at the firmware and what they did with not being able to expand the actual partition if you have a bigger card. It's a disaster. And then you don't even have over-the-air updates on top of all of that. You have a Wi-Fi device without over-the-air updates. Then if you go backwards and you look at previous releases, the 353 series and all of that, and you're just confused as to what are you guys even doing on software? How does it get worse over time when you're still releasing the exact same devices and you could just start using the same firmware? You are in charge of the firmware. Just do it, make it proper. You have the time, you have the money, obviously. It just doesn't make sense. There is absolutely zero consistency for Linux and Android firmware across the board from every single manufacturer. Powkitty is a bit different. They decided to just offload theirs to Gelos and said, hey, you guys do this, and it's probably for free, I guess, so they kind of win. But if Gelos has a bad day and they move away from Powkitty, what exactly happens to Powkitty at that point? Guess we'll see. But as far as Ambernic goes and what they're doing, and other companies too, they live and die based off custom firmware. A lot of us, the 35XX and Plus, the reviewers at least, said custom firmware isn't there yet when it was released, and to wait for something better. I know that I'm waiting, it's on my shelf, for Garlic or something better. I know a lot of others that I've spoken to are waiting too. They live and die off of firmware. Onion OS is one of the reasons that the Miu Mini Plus has taken off so much over the years. If it didn't have Onion OS, it wouldn't be as popular as it is right now. Gamma OS has saved a number of Android devices. Same thing, they wouldn't be as popular as they would if they had their stock firmware still. And you're seeing that with the 35XXH and Plus because nobody talks about them. There's just no reason to. But wait for a custom firmware to pop out that is worth using on it. And I don't mean that as a diss to any of the developers that are working on it. There's some great stuff. I just mean that for the general public, obviously there are certain firmwares that people like and people want, like Garlic OS. That's always the one that I get questions about. When that comes out, you're going to see the sentiment change. Same way it did with the 35XX when that released. But it's not all bad. Retroid and AYN are two companies that actually do have consistency in what they're doing. They listen to feedback and they actually release updates as they go along. Those updates might break things as they're fixing things, but at least they're doing it. At least they're going that route, keeping it in-house or whatever in-house looks like to them, and actually listening to feedback and making those fixes. That's what I want to see more of from Ambernic and I guess Powkitty, but they're doing their own thing. Somehow, I think the best way to wrap up this video is just stagnation. We're going to have those outliers, those companies like Retroid and AYN that are pushing the envelope, really trying to make a change in this industry, what we're doing for this niche and this retro handheld hobby. And then we're still going to have the Mius and Ambernics and Powkitties that are going to release the same thing over and over and over and over again because we keep buying them. And so if we look back in probably 2 years, we're probably going to be in the exact same spot. And I probably could just take this video and repost it and we'll be in the same spot. But we'll see. That's going to be it for this one. I had a lot of fun writing this video. I had a lot of fun talking about it. I really like having these kinds of discussions, even though it isn't a discussion. It's a one to you that you can't comment on. But let me know in the comments what you think, what your thoughts are on all of this. I'd love to do more of these types of videos because it's fun. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.